Hey, good afternoon. It's Monday, April 14th. I'm Rob, that developer dad, and we're working with C# and .NET and all the things. And yeah, we're working on getting the game content stuff plumbed out from resource access down to the user interface. And before I got started, I created a new manager class that has a dependency on the game content access library, just the abstractions. And of course, it's soon going to be time, actually now is the time, to bring that out to the UI. Now, before I do that, I got to make sure of something because I created this brand new project and I got to bump that back down to .NET 8, and I want to get rid of the implicit usings. There we go. We're good there. Let's make sure everything builds. Oh, it really doesn't like something. So game content queries. Let's implement that interface. Where's the rest of the angry code? Task. We got to bring in system threading. Should bring in this cancellation token. What's this grumping about? Deep six this. You can go away. And what else are you complaining about? This. Interface member content filter cancellation token. Oh, I probably have to come over here. Yep, I definitely have to fix this class up, or it's going to continually cause me problems. Save that. Save this. I think we're good. I mean, it's just going to throw exceptions at this point, but that's all good. ContentTree. IEnumerable, we got to bring in system link or system collections generic, user root, blah, 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 blah. And I created a new class called an object tree just before we got started. And this is a pure data type. And it's a generic object tree where all of the nodes are instances of the same thing. We've got a root, all of this stuff. We're going to be building this stuff out as we go. But I think what I want to do first is, before we get any further here, I don't have any problems in my code base. So let's see about, I'm just going to bring this manager in as is. I might inject a BFF for it eventually. But you know what? I really ought to stick to my patterns. I really, really ought to stick to my patterns. So I'm going to add a new file. It's going to be an interface, and it is going to be content workloads. And right now, it's just going to have well, we got to add some dependencies here. So we're going to add a project reference to game content managers. Very good. And save this. I'm going to pop out here using tdmf dot game content managers dot contracts. And we'll just do that. So filter content async, load user content async. Groovy. All right, cancellation token, all that good stuff. Now we need to implement this interface. So I'm going to add a new file, and it's going to be a class called Content Workloads. It's going to implement my content workloads. And we're just going to let it throw these not implementeds. We'll add a private read-only, not read-only memory content, but read-only. Game content queries. It's going to be content queries, and that's the manager interface. So good. And CTOR. Get rid of the parameters. We're going to accept game content queries and an instance of logger factory. Make it nullable. Logger factory. And we have to add the using. Go. What are you complaining about? Oh, yep, got to add the comma. And we'll just zap these extra braces that got added in. And we'll go private, read-only, logger of the content workloads. We'll pop this in here, just like so. Logger, log debug, and we'll go logger.log debug. Okie dokie. And we'll just do the nullable call there. So that if that log factory doesn't get passed in or gets passed in as null, matter of fact, I'm going to set that up right now, and I need to do the same thing on my manager. There we go. So if this guy gets passed in as null, we don't create a logger and we don't log anything. And let's also logger what did I call this class? Content Query Manager. That'll get brought out into the log context. There we go. Okay. Retrieves a flat array of game content items that match the filter. Retrieves and builds a content tree of all content belonging to the identified user. All right, cool. So I'm going to close iGameContent Manager for the time being. We don't need you open. We'll keep ContentTree open. Filtered content item. This looks about right. And we can close that. Content workloads, we're all good. And what we can do here is instead of throwing, we can if filter is null, what we're going to do here is we're not going to throw an argument null exception. I don't like throwing exceptions. We're just going to return an empty array of those filtered content items. Return array dot empty filtered content items. And we're going to turn this into an async method. There we go. This is a not all things. Yep, not all code paths return a value. And I'm going to say filtered content items equals, no, we're just going to go array dot empty. There we go. And instead of doing this, we're just going to say return items. There. Early escape if the filter is null. And then we're going to do a try. Catch. Error filtering content. Yeah, good enough. Throw. All right. And what are you complaining about? Not all code paths return a value. Return items. Now, the content tree, I think we're just going to return an empty content tree if the identified user doesn't have any content. But all this is a pass-through up to the actual manager. So let's do a try. Don't be a goon. Catch exception EX. We'll throw there, and we're not going to create the user root here. What we are going to do is var tree equals content queries, load user content async, cancellation token. All right. Now, this is the first time I have worked with using a cancellation token. Now, it wants to do an if tree is null. I think I'm going to prevent that up in the manager. And I closed that manager way too early. There we go. So we're going to come back here, and we're just going to return the tree. Save. So before I go too much further here, and yes, hey, what's up, C Films? So I've been writing .NET and async code for a long, long time, and I've never used this cancellation token thing. That probably makes me a subpar developer. So Please explain the correct pattern for utilizing cancellation tokens along the call chain of an async stack. The content workloads class is used to encapsulate the manager classes that provide activity implementations and should not be a terminus of an activity. I assume in these cases that I should simply pass that token along if same goes for managers. The activity will ultimately make its way to a resource access component, which will perform something interesting that should be cancelable. My very rudimentary understanding of these things is that they get created at the top, at the bottom of a call chain, passed through that chain to the different places where long-running tasks occur, where they are handled. Am I off base here? Now let's hope that Copilot doesn't decide to try and modify a bunch of code and stuff like that. It's been acting funny since a recent update. API endpoints, UI event handlers, background service entry points. So the API controller receives a token, same token goes to manager, same token goes to data access, database IO operations. Okay, so cancellation token parameter with a default value. Pass the token through intermediate layers unchanged. Yabba dabba 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 do. Combine tokens when needed using create linked token source. Okay. Groovy. So I need to bring the resource access component into compliance with this cancellation token pattern. And I'm going to do that right now because this is net new. So let's go out to resource access. I'm going to pop this open and game content access. We're going to retrofit this in right now. So task op results is the return type. Filter content. I'm just going to pop that down like so. And cancellation token All right. Groovy. Save. And I got to pop down to my content queries, which is no longer compliant with the interface. And so that means I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to put good author user ID on one line. And there's that. So I'm going to add context for content workloads. I'm going to add the content query manager. Oh, excuse me. Okay. The content queries class interacts with Azure storage tables, and so should be considered a terminus of an async call chain. How should I use the cancellation token in the filter content method? The project's been going slow but sure. I kind of took Friday off because I needed to do some busy work on some of the back end stuff. I wanted to get a UI in front of the administrative tables and so on and so forth, so that I can more easily manage user objects and so on. All of that's in preparation for actually launching the product, so that I can very easily see user accounts and so on as they're created, extended from monthly renewal, canceled, etc., without having to dig through and manually edit a bunch of JSON, which sounds like a terrible idea. So I want to see how this is doing its thing. So cancellation, oops, where are we? Cancellation token, throw if cancellation requested. All right, filter game content results. Yeah. This does all the things. Filter operation was canceled. Will throw. Nope, I'm going to change that up. It was canceled. Cancellation checks before expensive operations. Pass the token to task.whenAll. For each task result and task results. All right. Okay. So it looks like it's the very first thing we're doing. We got to do a try catch. All right. So we've dimensioned that stuff. And what I got to do here is wrap this stuff in a try catch. So try catch, and then we'll just do a basic exception. I'm going to grab this stuff. Cut that, drop it up in here. So we'll boop that in. And we're just going to push those lines of code in an additional line. We're returning our result. I'm going to get rid of this return here. And GUID error ID equals GUID.new GUID. All right. We'll say result.add error. Error ID. Good enough. What are you complaining about? I'm going to just go EX message. Good enough. That's all we need there. Now, in here, I'm going to say catch operation canceled exception. And we're just going to say add error. So can we do an add warning? Nope, just add error. I want to take a look at add error on this thing. Copy errors to aggregate errors. Yeah, I'm not going to sweat that. I've got a much more thorough and I'm going to say result.payload equals payload. It should be empty at this point. Save. Okay. Now, we're catching the operation canceled exception. We're not actually doing anything with it, so I don't need to name it, or I don't need to assign the exception to a variable, because we're just going to do a very specific thing when an operation is canceled. We're just going to send back a notice that, hey, the filter op got 86'd. So right here, before we declare our list of tasks, I'm going to say cancellation token dot throw if cancellation requested. And then we do it again before we start processing these. Okay. Save. And I'm going to try and build. Make sure that we don't have any problems anywhere in the code base here. Use configure await false for better performance in ASP.NET applications. Where is the configure await false? I don't see that. Oh, that needs to be on the await task.whenAll. Dot figure await false. Now, what does that do? So I also have to do location access and narrative element access to accept and use that token. Excuse me. So let's take care of that. And let's see. Location access, narrative element access. Because I believe these two, and I gotta make sure. Let's see what the error message is on here. Does not implement interface memory game content access filter content. Groovy. Okay. We're going to fix this up right now. So here's filter content. GUID author user ID. We're just going to bump that in by 1. Cancellation token. Cool. Save. And I'm going to fix up location access. Where are you grumping? Here it is. And we're just going to pop this down onto a new line. And okay. And of course I have to pass the cancellation token. And the cancellation token. Save. Am I passing that in the right place? I am. Okay. Okay. And then of course down here, here's location access. We're just going to add in the little error tag on the result that says the operation was canceled. Load filter locations, operation was canceled. Save that. Zip down here, add a specific catch for this guy. Filter narrative elements operation was canceled. Groovy. And then up in here, equals new. All I'm going to do is we're going to throw here. We're also going to throw here. Ah, what even? Stop that. And we'll throw there. Save. That was on here. Let's come up to location access. And we'll pop one there. And then finally, there. handling these tokens, is it appropriate to drop a throw if cancellation requested just before any async activities in the terminus methods? And I'm using the word terminus method to mean the extreme end of an asynchronous call chain. So typically we'll only do this when using cancellation tokens, as I understand what I'm learning here today in real time in front of your face. These cancellation tokens, we just pass them through the call chain until we're about to do something that might take a while, that the user might navigate away or whatever that causes one of these cancellation tokens to be triggered. Okay, so data access methods that interact with external resources. Current implementation already shows good patterns for token usage. Groovy. So we do the token check just before we build out the in-code infrastructure for talking to the Azure resource. We say, hey, we're about to do something that might take a while. So if cancellation gets requested while we're waiting for that thing to finish, I want you to bounce. And then we're saying here, we're about to do something else that might take a while. So if something external to, if something further down the call chain says cancel, let's bail. And when we bail, we just add that little filter locations operation was canceled, set the array to empty on the payload, and bail out. Like we just fall out of our catch block to here and down the stack, back down the stack we fall. So cool. All right. Before starting the table query, processing the query results, before converting the entities. All right. Yeah, that works. Cool. So we've got those up to date. And let's checkpoint all of these changes here. Add content management and filtering capabilities with async support. Commit. Push that up to the sky. Great. This is game content access abstractions. We can close that out. Content workloads, groovy. So let's get this stuff plumbed out to the UI. And close the manager for the time being. Close the game content workloads, or the Game Tools API workload provider. And we're going to go out to the UI. And we need to add a few projects. And TDMF game content managers absolutely needs to get added. We got to add game content access abstractions. Yup. And finally, we do need to add the reference to the materialized Azure Table Storage version of the game content access. Because we do need to tell the whole application to whenever something asks for an iGameContent query, use this. So now, let's see here. Got all those things I'm going to need to add. And these are in terrible order. I'm going to fix this up right now. Microsoft goes to the top. Game tools, that developer dad. Okay. Using tdmf dot GameContentManagers.contracts. Actually, I'm just going to say content managers. Excuse me. And then using tdmf dot game content access abstractions. Dot Azure Table Storage. Boop. All right. Save all of that. So here's program, main, setup logging, startup logger, setup config, create services. Go down to the definition. And let's see here. Here's our configuration. Load MS graph, add scoped. That's the rule set, card deck, dice bag. Now I'm going to pop down here and builder.services dot add scoped. And that's not actually the one that I want to add. Oh, where are we? Content queries. Okay, that ain't gonna work. I just wanted to get that in there for the time being. What I am gonna do is pull up the definition for use NPC table storage provider. Here's this. It's in a dependency builder class. All right. And that looks like the whole shebang that I need. So, up in Game Content Access, new file. It's going to be a class, dependency builder. We're going to make it static. And I'm going to come back here, grab this guy, and just pull him off screen so I can crib from him. All right, public static iService collection. use game content table storage provider. And instead of pulling in connection string, I'm going to pull in configuration. Nullable string connection string equals that. All right. I don't need content workloads. You can just stop that right now. Okay, connection string, yeah. And logger factory. Logger factory equals, I don't want to build the service provider. .get. Nope. Apple I need the logger factory from the services collection before the services collection has been turned into a provider. How do I get the egg without the chicken while I still only have the egg? No, that's stupid. Close. So here's a conundrum. Trying to set up a dependency in the main iService collection. That dependency needs an iLogger factory to be able to instantiate itself. No, I'm thinking about this all wrong. Like a big goofball. So if we can't get the connection string here, we're going to throw up. What we're going to do is services.addScoped GameContentAccess Yeah, I've had a momentary lapse of reason here. I'm going to pass in the service provider. We're going to create a factory method here. Logger factory. We're going to return content query as service implementation is that, and then we're going to return the service. There we go. And that should be happy. I'm going to save this, come out here, use NPC table storage provider. Instead of this add scoped stuff, I'm going to say use, and there we go. So there's all that stuff. We've got usage meters, usage manager, admin access, admin manager, townsfolk manager. Here's the AI subsystem. So I'm going to add the manager in here. Dot services dot add scoped. I content. What did I call that? Here's our content workloads. I game content queries. It gets a content query manager. Cool. And then builder dot services dot add scoped. I content workloads gets that. And then over in the root of the UI services, I have an NPC service proxy. This guy. I need to add a new file. It's going to be a simple class, and it's going to be a game content service proxy. Now, I need to crib from the NPC service proxy just to see how I'm setting it up. And I can see that it's pulling in a character workloads, a logger, all that stuff, right? Okay. I'm going to pull the NPC service proxy over here to my other monitor. And I'm going to reopen the game content service proxy. Acts as a proxy to the game content workloads API for the Blazor application. This is a encapsulation point that would absorb most of the blast radius if, when the API changes from being an in-process component to a remote service. So this guy needs private read-only content workloads, needs a private read-only logger, and then we'll do that. Bam. Okay. Now I've got some helper methods over on the NPC service proxy. Like their guard clauses and stuff like that, I believe. And I want to make sure I am getting them appropriately. There's filter townsfolk, delete NPC, save NPC. App state provider is an inbound thingy. Okay. An app state provider is where we get our current user, if I'm not mistaken. Just to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to pull this over here. This app state provider, the app context, get user limits. Okay. So, I'm also going to bring in private read-only. I think app state provider. No, I can't bring it in as a parameter. I'm going to inject that through the methods. So public and I'm going to make this an async task filtered content item. I'm good with using the manager contents or manager contracts for now. Return items, log debug. Oh, excuse me. If the filter is null, we're going to do that. I think instead of these, I'm going to GUID user ID. String, category, string type, string name. All right, now if user ID equals GUID.empty, then we're just going to do that. Logger.log info. There. Var filter equals new content filter. What do I like most about this project? That's a really good question, C-Films. It's the domain of the project is interesting to me personally because I'm a dungeon master and I really like having, or I'm really going to enjoy having these tools available to me. And it's just the level of abstractions that I have to come up with and everything like that is actually very interesting to me. What's called? I'm just going to get rid of this debug statement. Actually, I'm going to move the debug statement down to here. There, that's better. Okay, we await filter content async, and then we return the items. And that works. And then I am going to, let's just shrink this up and add another public async. Public async task of ContentTree load user content tree. We're going to take in user ID, add a cancellation token. I'm going to need to fix up the constructor on that to allow an empty constructor here. Log debug, blah, 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 tree equals that. Error loading user content, throw. I don't much like that, but it'll do. I got to figure out and fix up the right way to handle exceptions in a Blazor app. Save. I think we've got all the things we need here except for a builder dot. We got to add a scoped game content service proxy. And now we are ready to start adding a very rudimentary UI for this stuff. And I'm going to wrap this up in like a super private thing that only allows me to see it when it's me. But I'll do that stuff offline. And we're going to continue with this tomorrow. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to try and implement the actual content list, just a flat list. I'm going to try and get that implemented between now and tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to focus on building out this content tree concept, because there's a number of interesting things that we're going to have to deal with here. Because I want it to be a view of all of the entirety of the collection of content items that a user has created, but not all of it is going to fit onto this tree structure, because I'm going to allow users to create a town that isn't attached to a region or a country or a world. I'm going to allow users to, create the stub of a saga that hasn't got any stories added to it yet, and start planning out other stories that may or may not get lumped in with that story arc or the saga or what have you. And then we're going to be able to connect the dots and add stuff to other things more flexibly, in a more flexible manner than doing a definite, strongly typed, hardened tree structure. The tree concept is really just for organizational convenience, because it's going to make grouping things together into eventually manifesting a world or a story or an adventure as a campaign. It's going to make those types of things much, much, much easier later on down the road. Excuse me. So, until tomorrow, I'm going to say thank you for joining me. Thanks for hanging out, and happy coding. And I'm going to see how much more progress I can make on this afternoon. So take care, y'all.